Time now for the Nick Hart Show, a special sports production of the Wabash Valley College Radio, TV, and Digital Media Department, presented by 89-1 The Bash and the Gibson Southern Titan Football Boosters, including A&B Logistics, LLC, A&T Concrete Supply, Absolute Custom Machine, LLC, Angermeyer Electric, Brian Stevens Homes, Davis Brothers, Daylight Land Management, Daywig Meats, Dillbeck Properties, Diversified Instruments, DuBois County Garage Doors, Duke Energy, ERA First Advantage, Rodney Langford, First Rate Real Estate, Kent Kleiman, Foster Construction, Fryman Land Service LLC, by Fort Branch Car Wash, Gady Oil, the grandparents of Owen O'Neill, Grassmaster Sod Farms, Hobstadt Family Dentistry LLC, Hobstadt Summerfest, Heritage Petroleum LLC, Hillside Gardens, HMC Gears, Image Inks, in memory of Darwin and Eric Callis, in memory of Zach Bailey, Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance Nathan Belote, Jackson Seed Service, Jarbo Tax Service, JJ's Concrete Construction LLC, JMCO Technologies, Johnson Commercial Mowing Incorporated, K&K Excavating Incorporated, Casey Fuquay State Farm Agent, Kathy Solomon Photography, Key Construction Incorporated, Kissel Wagner Survey LLC, by Kirkwood Family Dentistry, Little Titans Daycare, Little Miracles Learning Center, Lowry Ag Company LLC, by Marcus Jungan State Farm Insurance, Melcor Custom Cabinets, MyTech Systems, by Murphy's Stump and Grind LLC, National Vet Health, Owensville Auto Body, Parker Excavating, by Perfect Climate Heating, Air, and Plumbing, Cole Concrete Construction, Prodigy Mold and Tool Incorporated, Pro Rehab, Rawhide Golf Supplies LLC, Rooted in Him, Sandy's Pizza and Mini Storage, Shearer Monument Works, by Scotty's Lawn Equipment, by Senior Tequila, Solman Family Farms LLC, South Gibson Titan Lacrosse, Steve Faulkner Chevrolet, by Stodgel Funeral Home, by Tai Chow, The Brass Ring, Titan Construction, TYFL, the Titan Youth Football League, by United Fidelity Bank, Value Built Homes, Bernardo Construction, Vomac Truck Sales and Service Incorporated, by We Simply Clean LLC, and by Young's Auto Body. The Nick Hart Show, a special sports production of the Wabash Valley College Radio, TV, and Digital Media Department and 89.1 The Bash.
And we are back here on 89.1 The Bash as a part of the Nick Hart Show. I've kind of lost track of how many episodes we're at now. You know, we're going through the high school football season as always. And Coach, we'll just jump right into it. Another dominant victory against Southridge. We kind of talked last week that it would be a tough match. And at first it looked like, you know, hey, Southridge, you know, they go down, they score on their first possession. But then after that, it was just all Gibson Southern.
Yeah, you know, always going to be a tough program to play against, especially at their place. You know, they're really, really tough. Yeah, we early, you know, they had a lot to do with it. But, you know, I thought we had some self-inflicted things on defense on the first drive, the big play. And then offensively, those first two drives, we just got ourselves behind the sticks with false starts and some things that we could control. They did some really nice things to us. That was part of it. But, you know, it's a lot harder to get first downs in 1st and 15 and 1st and 20 than it is in 1st and 10. So, you know, I thought once we kind of started to stay on schedule a little bit better, you know, we, you know, kind of adjusted how we were attacking them. You know, then our offense kind of got rolling.
You know, we're past that midway point in the season, and you know, in any sport, it's really hard to keep, especially, you know, you've been winning and you're coming off three great victories in a row. How important is it, especially during the middle of the season, to keep the pedal on the metal and keep that momentum rolling in your favor?
Yeah, it's really important. We always talk about stacking days, and eventually that stacks a week. You got to get better every single week. The goal is always, to be playing your best football when you go into the tournament. And if you go backwards for a week, you've really kind of put yourself at a deficit. So, very important to continue, stacking those days and those weeks. And our motto this year is win today. Just, each day that we have practice, or, is the weight room in the off season, was to win that day and focus on winning that day and getting better. And ultimately, you keep stacking those on top of each other. And you're putting yourself in a lot better position, going into the postseason.
And this is a super important week coming up. I know a lot of Gibson Southern fans have been looking forward to this game, and I know that a lot of the players have definitely been looking forward to this matchup. But we'll talk about Heritage Hills later on. We'll talk about that matchup. But when we get back here on 89 Won the Bash, we're going to deep dive into this offensive performance against Southridge this past week.
This special sports presentation of 89 Won the Bash is made possible by A&B Logistics LLC, A&T Concrete Supply, Absolute Custom Machine LLC, Angermeyer Electric, Brian Stevens Homes, Davis Brothers, Daylight Land Management, Daywig Meats, Dillbeck Properties, Diversified Instruments, DuBois County Garage Doors, Duke Energy, ERA First Advantage, Rodney Langford. First Rate Real Estate, Kent Kleiman. Foster Construction. Ryman Land Service LLC. By Fort Branch Car Wash. Gady Oil. The grandparents of Owen O'Neill. Grassmaster Sod Farms. Hobstadt Family Dentistry LLC. Hobstadt Summerfest. Heritage Petroleum LLC. And by Hillside Gardens.
And we are back here on 89 Won the Bash. I'm Austin Harrelson, Coach Nick Hart, as a part of the Nick Hart Show. This offense, it's looking beautiful week in, week out. I feel like I'm saying the same exact thing every week. And, as a broadcaster, when the offense goes very smooth, that makes my job so much easier. Coach, how is this team just keep progressing? It feels like last week, I couldn't talk anything better about this offense. I couldn't say anything better. But now I come to this week and I keep saying the same exact thing. How are you able to do it each week?
Well, you're going to have to come to one of our film sessions then. If you feel that good about it, and we can find plenty that, we can get better at and improve at. No, I thought, we started a little slow offensively. Again, they had a lot to do with that. But there was some, the false starts and stuff that kind of got us, behind the sticks a little bit to start some drives. After that, I thought, they were moving a lot on us pre and post snap up front. I thought it kind of took us a drive or two to, really feel good about that up front. One is, I think, I started calling things that were, a little bit more conducive to what they were doing. And two, we just kind of settled down and followed our rules, and ran our tracks. But yeah, I think, once we settled down, I think we scored on 5 straight possessions. They're before half and the one right after half. When we're clicking, I think we're playing at a really high level offensively. I don't feel like we're always clicking. So we're just, striving to get a little bit more consistent in everything that we're doing. Not just week to week, but, just series to series, play to play, continuing to try and, get that full click, going offensively.
So you talked about how this offense got off to a slow start, and that's the truth. The first quarter was 6-0 or 6-6, maybe. It was a very close game and the offense just hadn't gotten going. What are you telling your offense after that first quarter? What's kind of the pep talk heading into that second quarter? And then ultimately, they're bouncing back in that second quarter.
It was more about just relaxing. I think we, you know, some of their movement and some of the stuff they were doing up front, we were a little anxious. That led to some of the false starts. And so we just kind of had to relax. I felt like I started putting our guys in a lot better position, after the first quarter with what we were doing. With help from our offensive staff, I think we kind of honed in on, what would be the best way to kind of go and attack. But ultimately we just kind of we relaxed a little bit and started executing, at a higher level.
And it felt like in that first quarter, you could feel the game plan, right? And you guys kept the ball in the air. What was going into that game? What was kind of your game plan? Like, was the game plan, hey, at first we're gonna try and we're gonna get Zach going through the air, and then maybe everything feeds off of that, or where was your head at heading into that game?
No, not really. We were in a lot of 1st and 15s and 1st and 20s.
Right, yeah.
And it just kind of went that way. It wasn't really the plan or anything. It was just situationally kind of where we put ourselves, in some of those situations. That's what we felt we needed to do. It wasn't really the intention or anything going in. We just kind of got in some unfortunate situations. I think the first couple drives we had a false start, we had a sack, some of those type of things that really got us off schedule, and kind of took the running game out of our hands on those drives. So better execution, like we talked about, and just kind of putting it together. I thought when we stayed on schedule, it allowed us to be, kind of who we are, and have a really nice mix.
And honestly, I think after that first quarter, the guys responded pretty well. Dropping, like you said, 5 consecutive drives with a touchdown, and once again another great showing offensively. When we get back here on 89 The Bash on the Nick Hart Show, we'll talk about this stifling defense when we get back.
This special sports presentation of 89 The Bash is made possible by HMC Gears, Image Inks, in memory of Darwin and Eric Callis, in memory of Zach Bailey, Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, Nathan Belote, Jackson Seed Service, Jarbo Tax Service, JJ's Concrete Construction LLC, JMCO Technologies, Johnson Commercial Mowing Incorporated, K&K Excavating Incorporated, Casey Fuquay State Farm Agent, Kathy Solomon Photography, P Construction Incorporated, Kissel Wagner Survey LLC, by Kirkwood Family Dentistry, Little Titans Daycare, Little Miracles Learning Center, Lowry Ag Company LLC, by Marcus Jungen State Farm Insurance, Melcor Custom Cabinets, MyTech Systems, by Murphy Stump and Grind LLC, National Vet Health, Owensville Auto Body, and by Parker Excavating.
And we are back here on 89 The Bash as a part of the Nick Hart Show. Coach, this defense, I mean, we rave about this defensive line. And it's not just me. It's not just you. It's everybody. I mean, another great showing. Now, off that first drive, Justin Leathers gets the ball. He takes it. I mean, he's an incredible athlete. And he goes down the field, and, Southridge ends up scoring on that drive. What was kind of I wouldn't say the talk, because I know we've been through this. You're telling the guys, hey, just settle down. Just settle down. But did the players kind of at that point understand, like, at this point in the season, hey, we just need to settle down? Or do you still feel like, you have to give them this pep talk? Or are they kind of just like figuring it out themselves at this point?
Yeah, kind of figuring it out. Our defensive staff does a great job. I was kind of, after they scored, shifting to the offensive side, and what we were going to do. So those guys kind of took care of that. So I don't know exactly, what was said. But we just had to play our responsibilities a little bit better. We who was responsible for quarterback on the big run. We chased the jet sweep. And so, it was like power read off of a jet sweep. It's, we've all kind of evolved and we're doing the gun stuff and everything. It's still option football, just kind of dressed up. And, we weren't we weren't at all assignment sound in what we did on the big run, and kind of opened ourselves up. And, I thought after that first drive, I thought our defense was really, really good. I thought against the pass and the run, I thought we did a really good job. We probably played more man last week than what we normally do. We mix in some man, but we're probably more of a zone team than a man team, and we played a lot of man-to-man on Friday night, just kind of out of situational stuff. And I thought our DBs did a great job of doing that. I think that's always kind of a concern when you're, a majority zone team and then you kind of put your kids in man, for a whole night. Like, how are they going to do? I'm a big believer in kind of doing what you do well. But we felt that was our best chance to have success. And I thought our guys on the back end did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, before we do this show, I always write down questions. I try to find questions I haven't asked you. And what is it like during practice? Obviously the offense and the defense go against each other. What is it like watching such a well-rounded offense go against such a high-powered defense in practice? Is the intensity high? Just kind of describe practice between these two units.
Yeah. Right now, when you kind of get in the middle of the season here, we do some best versus best. But right now at this point of the season, you get so beat up on a Friday night that you're kind of, recovering as you go through the week, and you don't want to have a ton of contact as you go through it. So, right now it's mostly, on one end we got the offense going against this week Heritage Hills' defense, and on the other end, our second offense is running Heritage Hills' offense against our varsity defense. So there's not a whole lot of, ones versus ones, if you will. But during the summer and the early portions of fall camp, it was a lot of fun to watch these guys go at each other. I think they made each other a lot better. Like we kind of kept, preaching to our O-line, like, going against these guys is going to make you better. And it goes for the DBs versus the receivers or whatever it might be. So when you can have that type of competition, it's certainly going to make you better as a football team.
And when we get back, and we've kind of, kept the segment short here through the first three, but that's because we're heading into an incredibly big matchup. And, there's a little bit of revenge maybe in play. There's a little bit of, it's just last season, how last season ended. But when we get back, we'll talk about this matchup heading into Friday against Heritage Hills. You're on 89.1 The Bash.
This special sports presentation of 89.1 The Bash is made possible by Perfect Climate Heating, Air, and Plumbing, Cole Concrete Construction, Prodigy Mold and Tool Incorporated, Pro Rehab, Rawhide Golf Supplies LLC, Rooted in Him, Sandy's Pizza and Mini Storage, Shearer Monument Works, by Scotty's Lawn Equipment, by Senior Tequila, Solman Family Farms LLC, South Gibson Titan Lacrosse, Steve Faulkner Chevrolet, by Stodgel Funeral Home, by Tai Chow, The Brass Ring, Titan Construction, TYFL, the Titan Youth Football League, by United Fidelity Bank, Value Gulf Homes, Bernardo Construction, Vomac Truck Sales and Service Incorporated, by We Simply Clean LLC, and by Young's Auto Body.
Alrighty, and we're back here on 89.1 The Bash as a part of the Nick Hart Show. Coach, I brought this up to you during our first episode, and you kind of didn't want to brush up on it or touch it in any way. It's week one, I understand. But now we've made it to the game. And this is a game that, a lot of fans have had circled, maybe even some players. I was an athlete once. I understand. It's a big time game, especially how last season ended, losing twice to Heritage Hills. Kind of talk about how those two games are coming in, those big time losses. You're coming into this matchup. Are those two games having a play in this matchup? And is it kind of like, you guys want to get revenge, not just you, but the players?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I know some other people have different opinions in the coaching world. I think year to year is so different. They had guys graduate, we had guys graduate. Some of the guys that were making plays in those games for both teams are going to college right now. So it's two different teams, and ultimately, we could talk about it as a team or something, but on Friday night when they tee that ball up, it's going to come down to who plays better, who executes better, who makes more plays. Us thinking about losing to them last year is not going to help us win, and them thinking about beating us last year isn't going to help them win. It's going to come down to execution and those things, and so that's what we focus on. When we're talking is what's going to help us win this Friday. I do think our kids are really excited. I'm excited because it's a great test. Not many times do we get a chance to play the number one team in 4A. We play some big schools and some of that type of stuff, but you got the number one team in 4A coming to your place. And obviously they're really good, or I'm not a big rankings guy, but obviously they're really good, or they wouldn't be in that position. It's a great test for us as a football team and as a program, and a challenge that we're excited to take on.
You're coming off 3 dominant victories, and we kind of touched up on momentum at the beginning of the show. And how important is it for, hey, you're coming off of 3 dominant victories, but now middle of the season, you got to play one of the best teams in 4A in the state. How important is it for you guys to get this victory and continue that momentum? Like, hey, we just beat the number one team in 4A middle of the season. We're beat down, we're tired, but we were still able to get this victory. How important is that? Not just as a record standpoint, but just at like team morale.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I kind of live in a week to week world, and what I'm excited about is, you can tell by who we try and go play in the non-conference. I think games like this make you better as a football team. We're going to find a lot out on Friday night. I think we have with some of the games that we played early in the year, but we're going to find out even more on Friday night and what we can do well and what we need to get better at. And, it might be a personnel thing. It might be a scheme thing. But stuff we have to improve on. I think this is kind of a great mid-season challenge test, whatever you want to call it, for us as a football team and a staff. And really kind of they're the defending 3A state champs, and they have a lot of really good players back from that team. And if your goal is to win a sectional or a state championship, you're going to find a lot out Friday night about, where you're at, where you need to be, those type of things. And so, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And, what I think we'll probably take from it.
Yeah. And last thing I want to hit on before we end the show is for the fans and for the listeners who haven't seen Heritage Hills play. They don't know what their plan is offensively or defensively. Kind of talk about what you guys have seen on film heading into this week and kind of how you've been preparing against Heritage Hills offensively and defensively.
Yeah. I think the first thing is they have a great program, and one I have a lot of respect for. And I was telling somebody, I don't even know, I was talking to, I don't, we don't necessarily like them, and I don't think they necessarily like us because we've played in so many big games. Every year it seems like we play each other twice, and obviously that's not going to happen this year. But it seems like we play each other twice, every single year, and it's usually for there's other teams involved in both of these things, but it's usually for a conference or a section. If you're going to win the conference or you're going to win the sectional or you're going to win whatever, you're going to have to beat them, and they're going to have to beat us. So I think that's where there's a football rivalry between us. But I was telling somebody else, I think it's probably like the healthiest or most polite rivalry between two people, because I think there is a lot of respect, between both programs. At least there is in us going to them. A lot of times when you have like these rivalry type games, there's unsportsmanlike conducts and it's chippy and stuff like that. And I think both programs have really just over the years, this is my 14th year here over the last 13 years. We've shown up and we've played really hard against each other, and we didn't like each other for 48 minutes. But I think both programs have always handled it the right way, and how they go about it. So, but offensively, I mean, they present a lot of challenges. I think they have two SEC commits, and that'd be a big deal. I coached in Indy, and there's D1 guys all over the place up there, and two SEC guys would be a big deal up there. I think you get into 3A, 4A football, it's a really big deal. But as I talk about that, they have a huge offensive line, multiple other weapons. They got another kid that's going to play Division I baseball. So there's three going to be Division I athletes on their offense with a big offensive line. And so my point is, I think those two kids get talked about a lot, and rightfully so. But they have a great supporting cast around them. They're a really good football team. Which it still wouldn't be easy if it was just two, high caliber SEC kids that you're trying to stop. There's a lot of, there's a great offensive line and a really good running back and other good receivers. And, there's a lot of other pieces around them that I think makes it more difficult. And so, it's going to be a heck of a challenge for our defense. I don't know what they're averaging per game, but it feels like it's like 88 points or something. They're scoring at will against everybody that they've played. So, we just got to do a good job. Be us. We talk about it. When we played Rochester and some people, like, they're going to make some big plays, and we can't help them make any big plays. We have to, make sure that our responsibilities are taken care of. And if they make a play, they make a play. We come back and you try and do it again. We can't bust coverages. We can't miss a line. We can't, not play assignment sound on some option stuff. We have to do a good job of taking care of our stuff because they're going to make some big plays, and we don't need to help them do that. Defensively, a lot of the same thing. I think, obviously their offense has a lot of firepower. It's been doing really good. I think that program, even from when I was a kid or when I was in high school, has really hung their hat on the defensive side of the ball. They've always done a great job on defense. Very physical. I think they're probably as good as anybody around here about what I just talked about, being alignment assignment sound and not helping you make big plays. They do a great job of making you drive the football down the field, and not giving up chunks. So we're going to have to be really good and disciplined in what we do to try and put those drives together.
Coach, I'm pretty excited to call this game. I'm not going to lie. I'm really excited to be a part of the game. And, make sure to tune in this Friday at 7 p.m. as the Gibson Southern Titans will be back at home against Heritage Hills. It's a big, like you've said, it's a big rivalry game, but I think that the best rivalries aren't from the teams that, try and beat each other up. I think it's the respect level that, hey, both these teams are so talented, so good, and I think that's what makes a really good rivalry. But, Coach, as always, love having you on, and we'll be back here next week. Hopefully, we're having as good of a conversation as we had this week. But, Coach, as always, good luck to you and the guys, and go out there and catch a dub.
All right, thanks.
All righty, and make sure to tune in this Friday here on 89.1 The Bash at 7 p.m. for Gibson Southern Titans football. Make sure to tune in next Wednesday for the Nick Hart Show as Austin Harrelson. Coach Nick Hart alongside me. We'll see you on Friday and next Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Hart Show on 89.1 The Bash. Brought to you by the Gibson Southern Football Boosters, including A&B Logistics, LLC, A&T Concrete Supply, Absolute Custom Machine, LLC, Angermeyer Electric, Brian Stevens Homes, Davis Brothers, Daylight Land Management, Daywig Meats, Dillbeck Properties, Diversified Instruments, Du Bois County Garage Doors, Duke Energy, ERA First Advantage, Rodney Langford, First Rate Real Estate, Pet Kleiman, Foster Construction, Fryman Land Service LLC, by Fourth Branch Car Wash, Gady Oil, the grandparents of Owen O'Neill, Grassmaster Sod Farms, Hobstadt Family Dentistry LLC, Hobstadt Summerfest, Heritage Petroleum LLC, Hillside Gardens, HMC Gears, Image Inks, in memory of Darwin and Eric Callis, in memory of Zach Bailey, Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, Nathan Belote, Jackson Seed Service, Jarbo Tax Service, JJ's Concrete Construction LLC, JMCO Technologies, Johnson Commercial Mowing Incorporated, K&K Excavating Incorporated, Casey Fuquay State Farm Agent, Kathy Solman Photography, P Construction Incorporated, Kissel Wagner Survey LLC, by Kirkwood Family Dentistry, Little Titans Daycare, Little Miracles Learning Center, Lowry Ag Company LLC, by Marcus Jungan State Farm Insurance, Melcor Custom Cabinets, MyTech Systems, by Murphy's Stump and Grind LLC, National Vet Help, Owensville Auto Body, Parker Excavating, by Perfect Climate Heating, Air and Plumbing, Pole Concrete Construction, Prodigy Mold and Tool Incorporated, Pro Rehab, Rawhide Golf Supplies LLC, Rooted in Him, Sandy's Pizza and Mini Storage, Shearer Monument Works, by Scotty's Lawn Equipment, by Senior Tequila, Solman Family Farms LLC, South Gibson Titan Lacrosse, Steve Faulkner Chevrolet, by Stodgel Funeral Home, by Tai Chow, The Brass Ring, Titan Construction, TYFL, the Titan Youth Football League, by United Fidelity Bank, Value Built Homes, Bernardo Construction, Vomac Truck Sales and Service Incorporated, by We Simply Clean LLC, and by Young's Auto Body. The Nick Hart Show, a special sports production of the Wabash Valley College Radio, TV, and Digital Media Department, and 89.1 The Bash.